Welcome to Parks Pilgrimage. This is a project that Alex and I have been working on for the last year, and it's going to be an 18-month trip where we cycle to every single national park in the lower 48. We're doing this project both for the sheer joy of being in nature and getting to see our incredible parks, but also we're raising money for the National Parks Foundation. You'll be able to make donations through our YouTube channel, our Instagram channel, our Facebook page. We actually already got our first park where I live now. I live and work in Tucson, Arizona, and on either side of Tucson is Saguaro National Park. We'll bike out to Colossal Cave, which is still part of the Sonoran Desert. It's a little higher up, and it's a primitive campground, so it's only 11 miles from Saguaro. It's a great place if you want to bike into Tucson, have a place to camp and bike camp at, but then go and visit Saguaro. You can bike in to Colossal Cave, get a spot. It's $10 for a spot at Colossal, and then it's 11 miles from Colossal down to Saguaro, where then you can stop off at the ranger station and then do the amazing loop in Saguaro East, which is, according to Bicycle Magazine, one of the 10 best bike rides at the national parks in the country. And it's a wonderful little ride. It's a 9-mile loop, and you see an amazing amount of stuff. So I think it's a wonderful way, even if you're doing a day trip or you're only here for a few days, if you don't want to do a long bike tour, you could definitely use Tucson as a base, bike out to Colossal, spend the night at Colossal, come down, go do Saguaro East, and then bike back into Tucson, and it's a great 2-day trip. Today we're at Saguaro East, and we have Ethan here. Ethan is a
Interpretive Ranger here at Saguaro National Park. We're the folks that you meet when you first come to the park. Usually we'll be in the buildings, in the visitor centers, or outside. Maybe sometimes you'll meet us along a trail. We're just here to kind of give the first impression of the park and to get people situated and point in the right direction. If they need maps, if they need information, we're here for them. In 1933, we became a national monument, and that was just here on the East District of the park. We didn't add the second part of this park, which is the West District, until 1961. And then combined, both of these districts were a national monument for a while. And then in 1994 was when we got our national park status. Park has a really interesting history of the way it was founded. Basically, conservation groups and some local kind of iconic people in the area really wanted to protect the saguaro cactus. So they basically just used all the resources they could. Some of that was through the local university to actually just buy up as much saguaro-filled land as they could. Here on the East District, we have mountains that go up to about 8,600 feet. Big mountain range called the Rincon Mountains, which is one of the 4 major mountain ranges surrounding this Tucson area. The mountains are really spectacular. When you get mountains that are this tall, you tend to have a wide variety of life zones. All the surrounding mountains in the Tucson area are in the Arizona Sky Island region. So the Sky Islands are really what I was talking about before, with those unique, precious life zones that are found in these mountain ranges. Basically, they're called islands because the deserts that surround them here in the American Southwest and in Mexico are definitely a lot harder to survive in if you're used to more water-rich conditions. So they're called islands because the desert around them is seen as kind of an ocean barrier. A lot of the species that can only survive higher up in the mountains could not cross it, basically. So in that way, it is kind of an ocean, the way that it's much harder to cross an ocean if you're not an aquatic species, or in this case, a desert species that can freely move around on the ground. The common ones that people really like to see here are definitely the javelinas. They're a really iconic species. They're in the peccary family, which is not actually wild boars. A lot of people think that they're a wild boar. They're actually in this very unique family that's a little different. There's minor characteristics that make them different than wild boars, but they do look like them. They're those big, hairy, pig-looking things, and they're all over town. People people tend to see them just as often in town as they do in the park, because they are kind of just the resident dweller of Tucson. Another one is definitely the Gila monster. The Gila monster is a protected species in Arizona. It's a really, really charismatic lizard. Gets to be maybe about this big. They're really dynamic black and orange patterns on the back of them that people really like to see. This is actually the time of year where we see them, and we've actually been getting a lot of visitors recently reporting them to us, which is always great to see because we always want to keep our protected species nice and healthy. We have two species of woodpecker here. The more common one is the Gila woodpecker, and the less common one is the gilded flicker. But the Gila woodpecker is the one you'll see most of the time. They make these holes that are no bigger than the bird itself into the saguaros, and the saguaros actually kind of scar over, and Melanie's bringing over an example of how the saguaro reacts to these nests. This is called the saguaro boot. This is literally what the saguaro does in response to that kind of boring out of the plant. So they make this very hardy protective tissue around where the nest is, and so the nest would be inside of something like this. And the reason we have this is because when the saguaros die, this is left behind. This is a very strong and like hardy structure that survives even the saguaro. So when the saguaro falls over, you'll find the skeleton, and sometimes you'll also find this as well. There isn't an easy way to age the saguaro. People compare it to a tree in a lot of ways, but one of the key differences is that it doesn't have those growth rings. Trees put on really good indicative growth rings based on the seasons, which is just a great indicator of how old they are. You just have to simply bore into one and check them out for yourself. But the saguaro doesn't have something like that. So we have to rely a lot on kind of just estimating based on those that we know when they were planted, how old they get. They are very dependent on those key factors like water, soil quality, competition for resources, and the range is quite unique for each one. We do have general kind of outlines of when we think things are going to happen. The main one being when we expect to see arms on a saguaro. That tends to be between the years of 50 and 75. They can live up around and above 200 years old. The classic time of year to come visit here this is what most people ask when they come here during the spring, is when do the saguaros bloom? And the answer to that is a little variable, but it tends to be the very end of April and into the first half of the month of May. That tends to be when we get the most saguaro blooms. You can see on some of the saguaros back here that they are starting to bud, and that's a good indicator that in a couple weeks they'll be in bloom. We have a huge group of bikers that bike this loop as often as even every day for some of them. It's a huge biking attraction. Tucson in general is a huge biking community. As you guys know.
Yeah.
And the park itself here on the east side has this really nice loop that folks will love to bike.
And also, I'm going to encourage you, I'm going to be getting my new Parks Pass, which is the annual pass, and I encourage everybody who likes to visit the park to actually buy the Parks Pass, because it does a lot to help bring revenue into the park and keep the programs alive that the parks really need. It funds their conservation programs. It funds a lot of the stuff that happens in our national park. So
yeah, and I would also recommend that if folks have interest in supporting the parks around them, volunteering is a great way to do that as well. Our park gains so much from having volunteers. The volunteers are working right alongside me here, giving information to folks, doing tours of the parks, and it's all complimentary with your entrance fee. The volunteers really help us out a lot, and all parks I'm sure would be super happy to have volunteers. If you have a park near you that you'd like to volunteer at, to just reach out to them, whether it be via email or by phone, even on their social media pages. There's folks there that are going to be responsive and receptive to getting you in touch with the right people for volunteering.
well, thanks. We really appreciate you taking the time, Ethan.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
for sure.
In the video from Saguaro, just how much those passes mean to the parks, what kind of revenue they bring in, and also they're a great value to the people who buy them, because it's a year's worth of entrance into all of the national parks, but it also includes entrance into national forests, to the BLM land, to the Army Corps of Engineer lands. And so it's sort of this ticket to these amazing resources that we as a people have preserved through the federal government. We encourage you to get out, enjoy nature. How would we bring people on board to see this incredible journey that we're going on? Let them share like the joys of seeing these amazing things. Also some of the hardships. It's going to be brutally cold days, brutally hot days, wet days. we want people to see what it's like. A trip of this size, of this scope, of this magnitude. We want you to be a part of it. We want you to feel everything with us and to learn about, not just by touring in our parks, but just what it takes to sort of to go on an adventure this long. You know, I've resigned my position at the university. Alex has quit her job in Chicago, and we really want you to come along and be a part of it. So please come join us in our parks pilgrimage, and I hope you really enjoy what we do. We'll probably share some of our food experiences and some of the weird things we see on the road, but we expect this to be an incredible journey. It's not going to be an easy journey, but I think it's, you know, I smile just thinking about it. This is something that I've dreamed of for years, and I'm really excited that we're finally to the point where it's going to be happening. So please stay tuned and join us.